It was a bright evening at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. The place glittered with golden lights, polished marble floors, and chandeliers that shone like diamonds. Guests in fine clothes filled the tables, their laughter mixing with the soft sound of piano music. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved quickly, serving dishes worth more than what some people earned in a week. Everything about the restaurant spoke of wealth, status, and pride. Among this scene of elegance, the door opened slowly, and an old man stepped inside. His clothes were worn out, his shoes covered in dust, and his hair uncombed. He carried no air of wealth, no sign of importance, only tired eyes and a body that looked as though it had carried years of hardship. People turned their heads almost instantly. Some frowned, others whispered, a few even chuckled. To them, he looked like a tramp who had wandered into a place where he did not belong. The restaurant manager, a tall man with sharp eyes and a proud posture, noticed him at once. His face hardened as he walked briskly across the room, his polished shoes tapping against the floor. The guests watched in silence, curious to see what would happen. The old man stood near the entrance, his gaze wandering over the tables of food and smiling families. He did not speak, but there was something calm about the way he carried himself, as though he was not ashamed of how he looked. The manager stopped in front of him, his voice sharp. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. The old man looked at him gently, his voice soft. "I just came to sit for a while," but the manager didn't listen. His eyes scanned the man's clothes, his dusty shoes, his tired face. Without asking anything more, he raised his voice so everyone could hear. "This is a luxury restaurant, not a shelter. We don't serve people like you. Leave at once." The words cut through the air like a knife. Some guests laughed quietly. Others shook their heads in discomfort, but none spoke up. The old man stood silently, not arguing, not begging. He simply lowered his gaze, as if he had heard such words many times before. The humiliation hung in the air, heavy and cruel. The manager, feeling the eyes of the guests on him, decided to push the humiliation further. He stepped closer and said loudly, "People like you don't belong here. Go back to the streets where you came from." His voice carried pride, as though he had protected the dignity of his restaurant. The old man finally looked up, his eyes calm but filled with quiet strength. He did not reply with anger. He only said, "You should not judge a man by his clothes." His words were soft, but they carried a weight that made a few guests look uneasy. The manager, however, only smirked. "Save your wisdom for someone else. Out you go." The old man turned slowly, his steps heavy but steady. He did not shout, did not argue, did not plead. He left the restaurant as quietly as he had entered. The door closed behind him, and the sound of laughter and music quickly returned as if nothing had happened. But for those who had witnessed it, the image of the old man's calm dignity stayed in their minds. A young waiter standing nearby felt his heart ache. He had seen the old man before, near the marketplace, always walking alone. Something about him seemed different, not like a tramp, but like someone carrying a story no one else knew. He wanted to speak up, to stop the manager, but fear kept him silent. Inside the restaurant, the manager returned to his post with pride, convinced he had done the right thing. "This place has standards," he said to himself, "and I will not let it be lowered." He looked around at the guests, expecting approval. Some nodded politely, others avoided his eyes. The moment passed, and the restaurant continued its business. Plates clattered, glasses filled, laughter echoed again. But outside, the old man walked into the night air, his face calm, his steps slow. He did not look broken, even though he had just been humiliated in front of dozens of people. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity, as if he knew something no one else in that restaurant knew. If anyone had looked closer, they might have noticed the detail hidden beneath his shabby Coda watch of fine quality. Old but valuable, peeking out from his sleeve. Or they might have seen the way his eyes carried wisdom, the kind that comes not from poverty, but from a life of experience. But no one had noticed. They had only seen the surface, and for that, they had missed the truth. That night, the luxury restaurant believed it had turned away a tramp. What they did not realize was that they had turned away a man whose true identity would soon shock them all, including the proud manager who had humiliated him. The next morning, the restaurant buzzed with chatter. Guests who had been present the night before couldn't stop whispering about the scene they had witnessed. Some laughed about the old man who dared to step inside, while others felt uneasy remembering his calm words. "You should not judge a man by his clothes." The sentence kept echoing in their minds like a quiet warning in the kitchen. The young waiter who had seen everything replayed the moment again and again. Something about the old man didn't feel right. He didn't look like a beggar. His eyes were steady. His walk was slow but dignified, and even his silence felt powerful. The waiter remembered catching a glimpse of a watch on the man's wrist. Old but valuable, the kind only people of status owned. Could it be possible that the old man was not who everyone thought he was? The waiter shared his doubts with another staff member, who shrugged at first, but then grew curious. "Now that you mention it," she said, "I saw him near the bank once. He came out of a car, but it wasn't his, maybe a driver's car." I thought I imagined it. Soon, whispers spread among the staff. Some said he was once a wealthy businessman who lost everything. Others claimed he still owned property in the city. A few even believed he was connected to the owners of the restaurant. The manager, however, dismissed all of it. Standing tall with pride, he told everyone he was just a tramp. "I did the right thing by sending him away." People like that ruin the atmosphere of a luxury place. Don't waste your time with foolish talk. His words silenced the staff for the moment. But doubt lingered like a shadow. That evening, when the restaurant opened again, a group of regular guests brought up the incident. One of them leaned in close to the manager and whispered, "Do you know who that old man was?" The manager scoffed. "Some beggar, nothing more." But the guest shook his head. "I don't think so. My friend told me he's seen that man at the business district. People respect him. He might even be, well, more powerful than you think." The manager laughed it off, but his confidence began to waver. What if the whispers were true? What if the man he humiliated was not a tramp, but someone important? The thought made him uneasy, but he quickly brushed it aside. Pride wouldn't let him admit he might have made a mistake. Meanwhile, the old man himself walked the streets quietly, unnoticed by most, but unforgettable to those who had seen him. Though he had been thrown out, he didn't look broken. He carried himself with the same calm dignity, as though he knew something the world didn't. Those who looked closely saw respect in the way. People nodded at him in the marketplace. How strangers stepped aside for him, even in crowded streets. By the third day, the whispers had grown louder. Customers asked the waiters about him. Who was he? Where did he come from? Why was he here? The staff exchanged nervous glances, unable to give a clear answer. But the rumors continued. Some said he was a retired tycoon. Some said a hidden investor. Others claimed he was a philanthropist who had quietly helped thousands. The young waiter, still haunted by guilt for not defending the old man, grew restless. If he really is someone important, he told himself. Then what the manager did was not only cruel, it was dangerous. He decided to keep watch, convinced that the truth about the old man would return to the restaurant sooner than anyone expected. And he was right, because even as the manager strutted proudly through the dining hall, telling himself he had done the right thing, fate was quietly preparing the stage. The old man was not finished. He had left the restaurant silently, but his story was far from over. Soon, everyone, guests, staff, And especially, the manager would come face to face with a truth they would never forget. What they thought was just a tramp wandering into luxury would soon be revealed as something far greater, something that would shake the restaurant to its core. Asterisk days passed. But the whispers about the old man refused to die. The staff spoke of him in hushed voices. The customers asked questions, and even the regular guests seemed unsettled. The manager, however, brushed it all aside. He stood proudly in the middle of the restaurant, reminding himself and everyone else that he had done the right thing. A place like this cannot welcome people who look like beggars, he repeated again and again, convincing himself more than anyone else. But one evening, the restaurant prepared for something special. A new investor, a wealthy figure who was said to be visiting the city, had reserved the grand table. The staff polished every glass until it shone, set the tables with extra care, and adjusted the chandeliers so the golden light filled the room with brilliance. The manager stood straighter than ever, his suit freshly pressed, his smile wide. Tonight, he thought, would prove once again that he ran the finest place in town. The doors opened. Everyone turned to look, and there, stepping inside with a calm, steady walk, was the very same old man who had been thrown out days before, but he was not the same in appearance. He was dressed in a well-tailored suit, simple yet elegant. His hair was combed neatly, and beside him walked two men in formal attire who clearly treated him with deep respect. Behind them followed others, businessmen, officials, people of influence. The air in the restaurant shifted instantly. Guests whispered to each other, their eyes wide with shock. The manager froze. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His mind screamed in disbelief. No, it can't be him. Not the same tramp I threw out. Impossible. But the old man's eyes, calm and steady, met his own. The truth was undeniable. The staff hurried forward to greet him with bows and polite words. But the old man lifted his hand gently, silencing them. His gaze moved across the restaurant, stopping for a moment on the table where he had once stood humiliated. Then, without raising his voice, he spoke. I reserved a table here. The manager's lips trembled as he stammered. Oh, of course, sir. Please, this way. His voice was no longer sharp or proud. It was nervous, small, almost begging. He guided the old man to the finest table, pulling out the chair with shaking hands. The guests watched in silence, their curiosity growing by the second. Who was this man, really? When the old man sat, the men beside him spoke to the guests and staff. This gentleman is not just a respected figure in the city. He is the silent partner, the very owner of this restaurant. Gasps filled the room. The guests looked at each other in disbelief. The staff froze in shock. The young waiter who had doubted the manager's actions felt his chest tighten. And the manager himself turned pale, his pride collapsing into shame. The old man looked around the room, his eyes calm but firm. The other night, I came here in simple clothes. I was not welcomed. I was insulted. I was told I didn't belong. His voice was not angry, but it carried power, echoing in the silence. And yet, this place you all dine in exists because of me. I built it, I invested in it. I kept it alive when it was nothing more than an idea. The manager dropped to his knees in shame, his voice trembling. I didn't know, sir. Please forgive me. The old man leaned forward slightly, his eyes piercing. That is the problem. You didn't want to know. You judged me by my clothes, by my appearance. You thought wealth gives a man worth, and poverty makes him worthless. But remember, this respect costs nothing, and it belongs to every human being. His words struck like lightning. Guests lowered their heads, embarrassed at their own silence that night. Some had laughed. Others had whispered. Few had defended him. And now, in front of everyone, the truth was revealed. The old man stood, his presence commanding the entire room. "I do not need your pity, nor your excuses. I only hope this moment teaches you all something valuable. Never judge a man by the dust on his shoes, for you do not know the roads he has walked." The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the manager's sobs. The young waiter, tears in his eyes, finally stepped forward and bowed. "Sir," he said softly, "I wanted to speak that night, but I was afraid. I see now I should have. Please forgive me too." The old man placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled faintly. "At least your heart was awake. That is enough." He left the restaurant that night, not as a tramp, not as a beggar, but as a man of dignity and power. The guests never forgot the scene. The staff never forgot the lesson. And the manager lived with the shame of knowing he had insulted the very man who owned the place he was so proud to protect. And for years afterward, people told the story of the luxury restaurant where an old man once walked in looking like a tramp and revealed himself as the true master of it all.